This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
No.
I was not expecting to agree with nZo. I really wasn't. I know a lot of people are going to be upset by this, but this is me being consistent. nZo was correct. So why are people mad at nZo? Because nZo wants to open up America, doesn't want masks to be permanent. Okay, so let's talk about this. Let's read nZo's tweets. I'm going to agree with what I agree with. I'm going to disagree with what I disagree with. So let's see. So the Washington Post says masks are here to stay, and they're quickly becoming a way to express ourselves. This is, of course, the typical, we're going to mandate everyone wear a mask, and now they're just, coming up with all these decorated masks, which is a capitalistic way of selling you on an authoritarian plan. And it's authoritarian because it's government mandated. If people can wear masks if they want. I don't want people being mandated by the government to wear masks. So here's what this is what nZo has to say. nZo Amore, or nZo. No. What the fuck is happening? America, stand the fuck up. Mad face at the Washington Post. You should be ashamed of yourself. Middle finger. No one wants in America for their children that has them wearing masks. You people are sick. Mask off, America. Future, don't let this shit slide. Okay. I can agree with this concept of, you not want to live in a country where all the kids and shit are wearing masks. And I don't give a damn what Asian countries are doing. And a lot of people go through that. Oh, Japan and Korea, they wear masks. China wear masks. It's like, I don't give a shit. That's not the point. The point is we don't wear masks here in the United States. You also have to take into account that there are other concerns when wearing masks. I give you, it's an anecdote, but it doesn't mean it. I know anecdotes don't mean that much, but let me give you an anecdote. When masks became a quote unquote permanent thing here, even though they're not quote unquote permanent yet, when it became a very strong suggestion to the point where it was almost mandated you wear masks inside of buildings, the Family Dollar store near my house, which is, a couple blocks, got robbed that Wednesday. So it was like the mask thing became a big deal maybe the week before, not a week past before people were going into these stores robbing them. People have been getting into fights over these masks because some people don't want to wear masks and some people do. And now these stores are trying to make people wear masks, and it's becoming a big social problem. And you can disagree with the policy all you want, but people want the freedom to wear masks and people don't. If you're wearing a mask and gloves and all that type of stuff, how are you harming anybody else who isn't wearing a mask and gloves and all that type of stuff? It doesn't make any sense. But I agree with this here. Let's see what else he had to say. He said, it's one nation under God, but two under politicians. Divide and conquer. Start with humanity's fundamental institution, family. Journalism have never died. Propaganda started the Spanish-American War, and I still see no changes. That's a quote from Tupac. And I agree with this too. The politicians are the only people who their job is to set one set of people against another. This is what they do. This is obviously... It is class warfare, race warfare, gender-based warfare, and it's all being done to drum up politics. This is absolutely correct. I don't see how you can even disagree with this. There are people who if you agree something, it's even like this in pop culture, where it's okay for something to be terrible if it pisses off the right people. We see this in comic books and video games and over again. Like, what's going on with The Last of Us. It's a game I've never played. And on a system I don't have, so I'm not in that realm. But people seem to believe like, okay, if this section of society is mad, then what you're talking about must be good. And that comes from the politicians and their belief that if we can produce something that pisses off a certain class of people, whether it be white people, rich people, men, whatever, then it must be a good thing. And this comes from the politicians. Well, it actually comes from academia. We could talk about that all day because academia, it's okay to be sexist and racist and all that type of stuff, but you have to pick your enemies because you have that progressive stack where, there are certain acceptable targets and then there's non-acceptable targets. So if you're a part of the acceptable targets, you can be racist and homophobic or heterophobic and all that type of shit towards them. You could do that, but you can't do it to any other group. But I can agree with nZo on this. Yellow journalism all day. People we talk about it all the time in wrestling journalists. Wrestling journalists are just so bad. Sports journalists are also very bad. I saw a sports journalist earlier say that LeBron James is the best basketball player of all time because he wasn't afraid to stand up and speak his mind. He's like the Muhammad Ali of basketball players. I'm like, nigga, what? Nigga, what? He was talking. Look, I'm not a basketball guy, but that is the wrong reason to pick somebody as being the best basketball player of all time. You know, we were talking about Michael Jordan and LeBron James. You're supposed to look at the stats, how they played on the court. You talking about, well, he's a good activist. He's not even that good at that. That has fuck all to do with playing basketball. But these are the divide and conquer tactics that I was talking about, right? So you talking about, these are sports journalists who are supposed to be sports guys. They're talking about all this other bullshit. And then you also have, you know, your politicians and all that type of shit. So I agree with that. I haven't heard anything that I've seen from nZo that I disagree with yet. He said, my parents got COVID-19, sister, father, brother-in-law, and some of us are blessed with enough to have the antibodies. I watch the media castrate the American public, no balls, live in fear, fuck no. The media has fooled over 3 million people, 3 million Americans to give up their constitutional rights. Absolutely correct. This is absolutely true. You have constitutional rights whether other people don't believe it or not. I got into this crazy debate the other day with this guy who thinks that the government should be able to mandate you to wear a mask. And I said, you know, what happens if, you know, when the government starts telling you, and I know some people are going to be offended by this, but this was the right card to play for this particular guy because he was a Catholic and he is a government should be central and everything should be love thy neighbor and all that bullshit. So I said, so what happens when the government tells your son to wear a dress because it's good for his mental health? And he tried to dodge the fuck around that. But that's been going on for a long time. You know, whether you agree with it or not, there are people out here who are quote unquote medical professionals who will tell you that your son wearing a dress is good for his mental health, or your son being pumped full of various drugs is good for his mental health, even though we know it's the opposite, right? But if we're supposed to just listen to the medical professionals, who picks the medical professionals? The fucking politicians. You know, I had a whole rant on this on Twitter, and I may go on this rant a little bit later. But let's continue talking about nZo. So yes, you do have constitutional rights. The Constitution says that the government cannot mandate you to wear anything, and there is no compelled speech laws, and the government cannot mandate you wear anything. I don't understand how they can even say, well, because pandemic. No, this pandemic can last as long as they want it to last because they're basing it on ever-changing statistics. So no, I don't believe that. What else did he says? nZo says, I ain't stupid enough to leave my house without a mask. I love my family, friends, and the world I live in. Temporary guidelines versus a permanent reality. People are so inept to accept the narrative. Masks aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And that's okay with you? Wow. I love this. I love this because this is exactly what my central argument has always been. If you want to have a temporary guideline where people should wear masks, that's fine. If you want to make it voluntary and you want to suggest that people wear masks, that's fine. Because remember, they used to say you wear gloves too, right? A couple of weeks ago, it was you should wear masks and gloves. Now it's just masks. And you have to ask the question, why just masks? Unless you want to tell me that the virus is airborne, or people out here licking banisters, why wouldn't you also wear gloves? Especially if you're going to the supermarket where sometimes people touch things in the supermarket they ain't got no business touching. You know, you pick up shit that you ain't gonna buy and you put it back. I've seen people, I went to the supermarket earlier today and people were doing that. Taking up bags of chicken and putting it back because they're like, oh, I ain't got enough money. You know, looking at boxes of cereal and putting them back with no gloves on. But we're supposed to be health conscious, right? I mean, at least they were wearing a mask, right? I mean, they didn't lick the fucking box. They touched it with their goddamn hands. So I agree with nZo. You know, I agree with nZo on this one. So, I mean, it's very, very much into my wheelhouse that he's talking about the difference between temporary and permanent reality, the choice versus being mandated by the government. I agree with both of those things. When I went to the store, I wore a mask and I wore gloves. But I don't want the government telling me I have to wear a mask or gloves. And I don't want supermarkets demanding that I wear masks and gloves, because if I'm in there, I don't know who else is in there. You understand what I'm saying? And if somebody decides they want to try to rob the place or some shit like that, and everybody's in the motherfucker wearing a mask, how are we going to be able to do anything except, duck behind the Fritos and try to figure out what the fuck going on? It's just... And then you have all these crazy guidelines that make shopping longer, these 6 feet lines, and then you got the every other aisle is open. So you have aisles 1 and 3 open, but 2 has to stay closed. And it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? But I did, I don't want to go into too much into the politics on this, but I see that a lot of this stuff is about central planning. And it is central planning. I looked at the Illinois plan to open up in phases. If you only want to hear me talk about wrestling, you can stop now, because I'm about to go into a little bit of a political rant. But if you wanted, well, this whole thing has been a political rant, but I'm going more into politics, not so much about what nZo has to say or why I agree with him and why everybody being mad at him doesn't make any much sense, because it's a clear thing where he says temporary guidelines versus permanent reality, where he talks about government mandating you to stay home. And, he also said reopen America, but I've already done a video on reopen America. But I've seen the Illinois governor, he has this 5-step plan, and he's saying, oh, at this 5-step plan, you should be able to do this. And it's like, phase 1 through 5, and phase 5 is a complete reopening of the economy, which he says is 12 to 18 months away. So you trying to tell me you're going to hold people's jobs hostage for over a fucking year? Now, a lot of people don't seem to understand what socialism and communism and all that type of stuff is. Okay, it is not about wealth redistribution. It is about government control of the economy. When government can control the economy, meaning they can control who's buying and who's selling, who's working and who's not working, then you are in a socialistic, a communistic system. Okay? The Illinois governor has produced a central planning, complete government takeover of the fucking Illinois economy. Okay? He's talking about certain people can work and other people might be able to work 18 months from now. You see people getting arrested for doing hair and nails, and they talking about, oh, well, I got, now this, I think this was in, I wish I remember what state it was in, where the lady got arrested for having an open nail salon. And it's just absolute chaos. And this lady said she's not going to pay I think she said she might pay the fine, but she's not going to close her shop because she has to work. She has kids. Like, people don't seem to understand that. And they saying that, oh, well, you're selfish for wanting to work. What the fuck? I can't eat. What you eat don't make me shit. And there's a lot of people online who work from home and who, it does not require for them to leave the house in order to live and work, but it does for other people. And it's not fair that you will want to judge people for wanting to go to fucking work. They don't want the government dictating their lives. They just don't want to. And if you're mad at that, you're the selfish one, because it's not about you. It's about them. It's about the people who they take care of, the bills that they have to pay, all of the different things that they have going on in their lives. For you to decide on their behalf is selfish for you, because you're worried about yourself. If you can stay at home, you need to stay at home. But if they need to go to work, then they need to go to work. So this is absolute. I absolutely agree with nZo. There's going to be a lot of states that are going to do that Illinois thing, where they're going to hold people's jobs hostage, and and all that type of stuff for months and months and months. Because a lot, like my state of Michigan, they have this emergency clause that the governor has to give herself all these magical king-like powers, and she can just keep doing it because that's what she's done. She can keep giving herself these magical powers as long as there's a quote-unquote pandemic. an invisible enemy that nobody can see, just like the war on drugs, just like the war on terror, where you can just do these things and have this war on this virus. And the governor of Illinois is talking about, well, we're not opening the economy completely, which means festivals, and events, sporting events and stuff like that. We're not doing any of that until there's a vaccine. It's like, how can you do that? How can you hold people's jobs hostage and stuff like that all this time? But that's the plan. The plan is to control their economy, for you to be subservient to the government, sitting around collecting fucking unemployment and begging for stimulus checks. And everybody and most of the elites get to continue working, because the governors and all the bureaucrats, the cops, all of them, they still getting paid. And some of them are getting paid to sit at home. There's a lot of wrestlers that are getting paid to sit at home. And, they just kind of like, well, I don't care. You should stay at home. So I applaud nZo for standing up and you're going to take heat for this. Dustin Rhodes took heat for it. nZo is going to take heat for it. People who have said, hey, this shit has to stop, they're going to take heat for it, but it needs to be said. You have to stand up for yourself, because you see now that other people are not going to stand up for you. You have to stand up for yourself.